The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. We talked about distillery. That's never going to catch on. And comic startups in general. So this mail talks about the flaw that they see with distillery. It's pronounced distillery. I get it, but I don't like the no vowels. I get it. You're appealing to Gen Z, but they're not going to buy your product anyway because they don't have any money. I'm just kidding, mostly. It says, Dear Perch, the Slayer of Arby's, Global Traveler, and so much more. I wish I was a Slayer of Arby's. I don't, some people, by the way, talking about companies they'd like to see fail and everything else. You never want to see a company fail. But on the other hand, can you think of the public health benefit if Arby's was to go under? I mean, just the sheer, better living. I mean, it would be we don't need to go down there. It says, now that we're past pleasantries, I wish to get to the core of my email and talk about the best way to plan a comic publisher. Distillery and Bad Idea were not treating comics as something to read, but rather something to collect. But part of the reason why Action Comics #1 is worth something is because people actually care about Superman. It took decades to build up Superman in the eyes of the public, and these publishers are just playing. And these publishers are just planning. Nobody is going to care about what Scott Snyder comic he puts out through Distillery in 5 years, unless the odd chance is that it breaks out. That sentence seemed a little bit blown, but I get the point. And I do think you're right. It's a court law. By the way, Superman, got popular out of the gate, but the more impressive part is it maintained it. So, Superman as a character was, grabbed the imaginations of people, but the real benefit, to the real plus to that character and what they were able to do is they got people to keep caring about the character, which is pretty impressive for decades. Anyway, back to this. It says, I doubt that any of these comics will become evergreen classics, will become a cornerstone in anyone's books collections, because they were made with the intention of becoming collectible and not something to read. Why make being able to read the comic second to it being a collectible? Good question. Maybe for once, somebody can start a publisher with the idea of making comics that everyone wants to read, not as some fancy collectible, nor as a Netflix pitch, but a company that actually wants to grow the sales of their comics to get them into the millions. See X-Men's #1 record shattered in a moment. But I guess it would require long-term ambition and an actual competitive nature, not their daddy's money that they get as an allowance. And in fairness, a lot of these people are also fleecing, venture capitalists. So it says all readers Distillery will end up attracting will be those that are already into comics and who already know who Scott Snyder or Ram V are. But these so-called disruptors never grow the comic book readership as a whole. The best way, in my eyes, to attract a new reader is by having awesome art, but you keep the reader because of the writing and inner story, or how the breasts look on the page. Well, that is very important. Let's never forget about the tits, boys. Anyway, to debrief. Oh no, I'm going to be canceled now. To debrief, the greatest damage that the 90s did to comics, 100% agree with what you're about to say, is it instilled the ideas that comics were collectibles instead of something to read. New publishers only serve the niche audience already buying comics and hire writers that only the niche will care about. There's no long-term hope to grow the brand or readership. I shouldn't be the person pointing this out. I'm 19 compared to all these people. I'm pretty sure I could come up with a better business model than Distillery. Maybe I just will as a hypothetical plan. Why make it hypothetical? P.S. In the digital world, what in the hell is direct about the direct market? Because going to a comic book store isn't really direct compared to reading it online. Well, fair enough. A lot of good points here, and I think that's right. What's funny about that is, you look at a guy like Scott Snyder, for example, who's part of Distillery and has been part of a bunch of these companies along the way, and Comixology, the stuff there. And you look at that and you go, Scott Snyder is clearly a breakout writer. If you read his Batman New 52 series, it would appeal to new readers. It did draw in people who were just comic collectors. It was the story. This is the interesting part. It was the story that did that. It wasn't Scott Snyder's name. But Scott Snyder had the ability to, and still has the ability, I'm sure. He had the ability to tell a really great story, or a story that would attract both long-term collectors, which is nice, but also new people from the mainstream or new people from outside comics. He brought new readers into comics. But what's important to note here is it was never his name that did that. It was his writing. His writing created the reason why people came to the store and bought the comics. They loved that story. Now, if you're already into comics, then the name matters. Obviously, if you already know comics or collecting comics, then hearing Scott Snyder's name means something to you. You know what that, you're going to collect that comic, so you like him. But it doesn't solve the grow the readership problem unless you're growing the readership from the existing pool of comic readers. And I think hopefully everybody's on the same page at this point that the comic business isn't sustainable that way. We can't just keep the readers we've got. We've got to get new ones. The difficulty has been, how do you get those new readers? Well, Distillery and others think the way you can get them is through, digital scarcity and tapping into that collector's market. But I think you, as the letter writer here, have it exactly right. I don't think you are going to get new readers with that. Who's going to come in to comics from the outside going, oh boy, I can't wait to pay $30 for a variant cover. I don't know what those things are, but here's my money. Nobody's going to do that. That's not how new buyers, people from outside the industry, think. Everybody starts comics in the same place, and we can be as fancy as we want with it. But that same place is very simple. They come into comics because they want to read a good story. They want to be entertained. Now, maybe they want to be entertained by a superhero book. Maybe they want to be entertained by a slice of life book. Who knows? But nobody new to comics is coming in going, I cannot wait to buy a Scott Snyder comic, put it in a bag, send it off to get graded and slab it, and, we have a 9.7. Can't wait. No new readers are coming in that way. And you're right. One of the reasons why I dislike the 90s, and keep in mind I was selling comics at the time, so I watched the effect it had on people, is that it became less about the story and it became more about polybag comics. And there's a trading card in there and all this other shit that was a gimmick. And gimmicks pop. And it did. It completely popped. The thing that gets comics to be massively successful again is the story. No matter how you cut it. Look, Civil War, the comic, was very successful. Why was it successful? Because there was a story where the superheroes are going to be at odds with each other and fight. It was because Mark Miller wrote a good story that attracted people, but it wasn't Mark Miller's name. Again, all the new people who heard the buzz about Civil War heard there's a big story here, there's like comics are going to be really, really cool. They did not hear like, hey, Mark Miller is writing something. Go get that. That wouldn't have moved a single person. Nor would people have said, there's a J. Scott Campbell variant cover too, and Mary Jane's like practically got her tits out and there's no organs. It's amazing. Nobody, new readers aren't coming in for that. I know some new readers might be attracted by a good set of tits, and I don't blame them. I mean, who wouldn't? But quite bluntly, you could just go to Brazzers or something like that and just get those boobs instantly. You don't need to. You're not paying $30 for a variant cover. That's insane. As good as J. Scott Campbell's art is, if you're after lewds, the comics is not gonna be your first stop. I mean, I in no rational world is that your first stop. But all that said, I think that these new companies, the problem is they're like a bold new comic publisher that's going to break new ground. Yeah, except it's built on the premise of the same old ground. And that same old ground is collectors, the direct market, the same old stuff. That's not disruption. And extremely weird to say that the right kind of disruption is the classic original point of comics. Tell a good story. Get people attracted and attached and hooked on an amazing, comic that combines, great art with great story, and you want to read it. That is the disruption right now for comics. Crazy, right? Somehow comic books got themselves into a world, like if you compare this to cars, and all these companies like, we're a brand new automotive company, and what we've got? We've got digital technology that allows you to download apps. And our comic company is even more special. We've got something where, the paint on the car can be changed with a button inside the car. and you could have any color you want. These are really cool features. It would be great. And our new automotive company, hell, we are only producing 100 of each car. We're gonna stamp. There's gonna be like a number on the outside, so they're gonna go fast. They're gonna be scarce. And you look around at all these cars and all these companies. You're like, yeah, the problem is none of them can drive. They don't turn on. There's like no ignition. You left out the engine. They just sit there. They're very pretty, but they don't do anything. And imagine if somebody came around and said, hey guys, all you new car companies, all you people putting out stuff, you need to think differently. You need to think disruptive. You're gonna need to build a car that can actually drive. That when you step on some kind of pedal, that it moves and it gets you to your destination. Hopefully without getting rained on, because you remember to put a roof on it, or at least something that could, maybe it was a convertible and the roof could come on up. I don't know, whatever. But imagine if somebody came out and said something like that, like, "Hey guys, remember, we got to have a car company that has cars that can drive. They've got to be able to move somewhere because that's their core. That's their core purpose." And I like your, paint could be changed because it's digital on the outside of cars button. That's pretty cool. We'll file that right here in the division that's like putting lights underneath the car, so you cause the asphalt to glow when you drive down the street. Pretty cool stuff. But remember, the car's got to drive. Imagine how absurd that would be. But that is, in effect, what we have with comics. We're sitting here in 2023 going, hey, new companies. Lots of cool ideas here. Man, that's a good idea. That only selling it digitally for 30 days, and then it's going to be like, the comic gets to be put online, and the creators get a chunk of that, and that's all pretty cool. And that idea you have about creators getting more of the rights to their comics and actually owning equity in the company, that's pretty cool. That's good for you, for creators' rights. It's cool. Don't forget though, the comics have to be readable. They're gonna need to be good. They're when you pick them up and you buy them, you're gonna need to go, wow, that was a great story. I don't mind spending $4 for that story because that was a kick-ass story. You're gonna have to do that. And when you think about why Mark Miller has been successful off doing his stuff, he puts out this Ambassadors comic, and it's good. It's a good comic. And yeah, it's nice that Travis Trest is doing art for it, and it's nice that Mark Miller is the writer, and kudos to him. That Travis Trest interview was great. But what really makes it work? It's a good fucking story, and the art is good. If it was, Travis Trest came and did the art, but it was absolutely awful, and the story was just stupid. But it's like, hey, we're putting a trading card in there with a poly bag. Who cares? Who cares? The reason why it works and it sells and people are excited about it, because it's good. That's why. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for listening.